You know, it's funny how some of the biggest inventions in the world aren't born from a flash of genius, but from just pure head-banging frustration. Today, we're digging into the secret history of superglue, a failed experiment that accidentally became one of the most useful things on the planet. But first, let's just get to the wild part. How in the world is it possible that one single drop of this stuff is strong enough to lift the weight of 2 cars? To figure that out, we have to go back to the beginning, to a time when this incredible strength wasn't a feature. It was a massive headache. So here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with its totally accidental discovery, then we'll dive into the molecular science of how it actually works. We'll look at its strange weaknesses, see how it ended up saving lives in operating rooms, and finally, explore how this failed plastic might just help solve our global plastic problem. All right, let's dive into that sticky mistake. Because this story doesn't begin with someone trying to make a powerful glue. Nope. It started with someone trying to make crystal clear plastic for World War II. So picture this, it's 1942. A chemist named Harry Coover is working with this stuff called cyanoacrylate to make plastic gun sights. But he gives up on it because it just stuck to everything. It was useless. Fast forward to 1951, he's at it again, this time trying to make jet canopies. Well, a coworker didn't get the memo and accidentally glued 2 super expensive prisms inside a $10,000 machine together. Permanently. But this time, a light bulb went off for Coover. By 1956, it was on store shelves as Eastman 910. And that quote right there, it just nails it, doesn't it? The inventor himself called its stickiness a severe pain. What was once this frustrating flaw was about to become its greatest strength. All it took was a different way of looking at it. And, yeah, a very expensive accident to make him see it. All right, so what is actually going on inside that little drop of glue? How does it go from a liquid to this super strong solid in literally seconds? Let's get into the chemistry. The key process here has a fancy name, polymerization. Inside the tube, superglue is basically a liquid soup of tiny individual molecules called monomers. But when you squeeze it out, those monomers start linking up, almost like they're holding hands, to form these long, solid chains called polymers. And that change, from a liquid to a solid mesh of chains, is what creates that incredibly strong bond. So what's the trigger for this whole thing? What kicks off this crazy chain reaction? It's not air, it's not heat. Believe it or not, the secret ingredient is water. Even the tiniest microscopic trace of moisture that's on pretty much every surface is enough to start the whole process. And this is what makes it so different from, say, the white glue you used in school. White glue has to dry out. The water in it has to literally evaporate for it to get hard, and that takes a while. Superglue is the exact opposite. It actively looks for water to start its chemical reaction, which is why it happens so ridiculously fast. Okay, so let's walk through this step by step because it happens in the blink of an eye. First, you put the liquid monomers on a surface. Second, the little bit of water that's already there kicks off the reaction. Third, that sets off a domino effect, a lightning-fast chain reaction where all the monomers link up into solid polymer chains. And finally, those chains snake their way into all the tiny cracks and pores on the surfaces, locking them together. All right, so if this stuff is so strong, why have we all had the experience of it just snapping apart? Well, it turns out superglue has a very specific kind of strength and a very specific Achilles heel. First off, just how strong are we talking about here? We're talking about a tensile strength of over 25 megapascals. Now, that number might not mean much, but to put it into perspective, a small patch of superglue could, in theory, hold up an elephant. Yeah, an elephant. The reason it's so strong this way is that when you pull it straight apart, that's called tension, the force lines up perfectly with those long polymer chains. The force gets distributed evenly across all of them, which makes the bond just incredibly tough. But here's its kryptonite. The polymer is actually very brittle. So if you apply a sideways force, called shear, all that stress gets focused right on the edges, and it fails. It's even weaker if you try to peel it. A peeling force concentrates all the energy on a tiny line of bonds, breaking the chains one by one, kind of like unzipping a zipper. So this bizarre mix of incredible strength and surprising weakness, well, it led to its most unbelievable application. The story goes that after Coover used the glue to seal a cut on his son, he had this huge realization. What if this accidental glue could actually save lives in an operating room? Now, obviously, you can't just squirt the stuff from the hardware store into an open wound, right? There were 3 huge problems they had to solve. First, that super fast chemical reaction releases heat, which can irritate or even burn skin. Second, it breaks down into nasty things like formaldehyde. And finally, it's just way too stiff and brittle for flexible human skin. And this is the brilliant part. All three of those problems were solved with one single elegant change of the molecule. They just made its carbon chain longer. A longer chain slows down the reaction so it doesn't get as hot. It also creates more flexible polymers that can move with your skin, and it breaks down way, way more slowly so it isn't toxic. This medical version was actually used as a spray to stop bleeding in the Vietnam War, and it saved countless lives. Okay, so we've gone from a failed plastic to a ridiculously strong glue to a life-saving medical tool. And now, the story brings us right back to where it started, back to its identity as a plastic. But this time, it might actually be a solution to our massive recycling problem. So here's the property that changes the whole game. Most plastics get weaker and degrade when you try to recycle them. But if you heat up superglue plastic to around 210 degrees Celsius, it doesn't just melt, it depolymerizes. The chains just neatly break apart, turning right back into the pure liquid monomers they started as. What this means is you could have a nearly perfect closed-loop recycling system. Think about it. You heat the old plastic up, it turns back into a pure liquid. Then you purify that liquid and use it to make brand new top-quality plastic with zero loss in quality. It's not downcycling, it's real recycling. And just how efficient are we talking? Well, researchers have already hit a 93% recovery rate. Let me say that again, 93%. That means for every 100 pounds of old plastic you put in, you get 93 pounds of pure, good-as-new liquid back out. That is just unheard of for most of the plastics we use every day. So it really all comes back to these words from the inventor himself, Harry Coover. His journey with this amazing chemical is such a powerful reminder that sometimes the most frustrating problems and the most unexpected failures are actually hiding the biggest breakthroughs. The only question is, are we open-minded enough to see them?